Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody. I say Merry Christmas because I am a believer in Christ. Today I come to talk about a couple things. It starts off with, let me start off by saying, the views expressed here today don't represent FAMU. I stopped working there 2 years ago. They don't express HBCU Game Day, who I presently work with. They only represent me and my personal opinions. And my personal opinions is we should never come out with lists of all-time greats because it's never going to end well. I think President Elmira Mangum, FAMU's former president, on the 100th anniversary of FAMU football, decided not to allow them to release a list because there were so many opportunities for just bad blood to happen. But the MEAC released earlier this year the MEAC top 50 all-time football players. And the list was good. The list was good. But the reason I hate these lists is because people like Earl Holmes was left off. Earl Holmes was left off of the list. How can you have a MEAC list of top 50 football players of all times and leave off Earl Holmes? Earl Holmes came into his own as a sophomore and earned All MEAC as a junior. He earned All MEAC, and he was known as the terror of the league his junior year, and he also made All-American. His senior year, he blossomed into one of the best MEAC football players of all times. He made All MEAC, All-American, and Sheridan voted him the football player of the year, defensive football player of the year in all HBCUs. Yet, he did not make the top 50 list. You know, in that senior year, Earl Holmes got 30 tackles, 30 against Southern University. Pete Richardson mentioned him by name after the game. Against University of Miami, Butch Davis mentioned him as the linebacker that they just could not stop because he terrorized even the University of Miami Hurricanes, who were at the peak of their performance at the time. He went on to have a great NFL career. A stat came out recently that named the top 10 pass and run stuffers, and Earl Holmes is in that top 10 with names like Junior Seau, Darnold, J.J. Watt. Earl Holmes was the epitome of a football player. He was feared. But I don't need to tell you anymore. Just take a look at this video. Well, looking at that video, looks like somebody who's one of the top 50 players in the MEAC of all times to me. Then later they released the all-time MEAC volleyball list and celebrating 50 years of the MEAC. This is a good list. It had 14 FAMU players on it, so I'm not complaining about that. But I would beg to say that they left off a player that was better than even most of the FAMU players that are on the list. Jayli Jackson, she came in from California. She was all MEAC her junior and senior year. Also her junior and senior year, she led the NCAA Division I in hitting percentage. She was on that team that hosted the NCAA Regional on campus, the first time it had ever been done. NCAA Regional, University of Jacksonville, University of Florida, and Stanford University came to FAMU's campus. And Mary Wise, who was University of Florida's coach, who was so used to hosting regionals at University of Florida, let it be known that she was not so happy to have to come to FAMU. But the NCAA said because of the accomplishments of that team, that they were deserving of the ability to host. So on campus, FAMU hosted the NCAA Regional, which was nationally televised, plus Stanford ended up being the national champion. So there's not a school in the MEAC that has done that, hosted an NCAA Regional with an NCAA champion, eventual champion comes out. But that team, going back to Jayli, it was a 1-2 punch between her and arguably the best player ever in the MEAC, Adriana Costa-Denova. But everybody knows it was a 1-2 punch. They would set, and if you double Costa-Denova, Jayli would kill it. If you double Jayli, Costa-Denova would kill it. It was a 1-2 punch that helped lead that team. That is definitely, by far, the best FAMU team, and I will argue that it was the best team in the MEAC because of the quality of wins they had. Those teams beat the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. So you leave Jayli Jackson and put some players, even FAMU players, that she was better than on the list. This is why I hate these lists. I never have liked them because there is no way to get them right, but these are two absolute omissions. Earl Holmes on the MEAC all-time football list and Jayli Jackson on the all-time volleyball list. And while we're at it, MEAC Sports Hall of Fame, there was one player who was the first offensive lineman ever franchised in the NFL. You know, it's hard for offensive linemen to get stats, but he was drafted because he was such a great lineman. Great lineman, he was a people mover. He had initially signed with Florida State, and his father convinced him to sign with FAMU. His name's Wally Williams. He played for the New Orleans Saints, but the first offensive lineman ever franchised was number 63 for the Baltimore Ravens, Wally Williams. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.